So I went to Utah over the weekend, last Thursday, to see my dad. My dad's old, 83 years old. He's shaped like a question mark now, like a cartoon old man. Little tiny steps and everything, but it was fun. Have a great time hanging out with my dad. Especially now that he needs help. It's weird. Like you'd think I would like it less, but it's not true. Turns out I like helping old people. Well, I like helping my dad. Anyway, it was nice being off Facebook. When I get on the road and I go home, I don't have time to be on Facebook. Like, I didn't even know anything about all these shootings. As if they're any surprise. Everybody's got a theory of why the shootings happen. You know? None of it seems like a mystery to me. Like, duh. Of course there's going to be shootings. You know? You screw up the fabric of society and there's going to be backlash. Most of these kids don't have parents or dads. You know? You need a dad. No offense to you guys that don't have dads, but dads are important. They correct you. They give you guidance. Sometimes they overcorrect you. Anyway, I saw my mom too. It's fun, you know. I grew up with 17, well, it turns out 18 siblings. There's one that I never even knew about until recently. 17. Lots of step kids and half kids in there. My parents are both in their third marriages. Well, my stepdad died a few years ago. But that's a lot of kids. Too many. Too many kids. Too many marriages. It's, you just, at a certain point, you just got to admit, I didn't get an ideal upbringing. Who does, though? Who does get an ideal upbringing? I mean, if anything, though, I got lots of examples of dads and moms in my life. Tons. Funny little story is, bringing it around to violence. Where does all this violence come from? And I'm not a violent guy. Most of the stories I've told about violence that have happened to me in my life were made up. Like as a kid, I used to make up stories of violence, fights that I'd been in that never really happened, I made them up to make myself sound tough. I remember one fight I told people about. I invented a fight with a skinhead. So I'm pretty much like everybody, making up Nazi stories. Because who's a better villain than a Nazi? So I made up this story where I fought with a skinhead when nobody was around when I was walking home from Salt Lake. And boy, did I kick his ass. Anyway, my stories of violence. Not a lot of violence happened to me. I mean, there has been. I got pistol whipped in West Oakland. I got sucker punched in San Francisco. Quick events. Wham, bam, lose some teeth, crack a skull, blah, blah, blah. But growing up, the violence in my family came from my mom and my sisters. What? The girls? Yeah, I mean, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like bloody murder. It wasn't merciless beatings. I didn't walk around with black eyes or broken arms. But I did have claw marks. My sister would pinch me with her fingernails, and it would hurt and draw blood. My mother would beat my butt with a wooden spoon, probably daily. The answer to misbehavior in my family, amongst the women, was violence. My dad only spanked me one time. Only once. You know, if I had to count up the amount of times that a human being made physical contact, violent physical contact with my body, I mean, if I had to account for it all, I would bet you at least 95% of that violence was committed by women. My mom and my sister. You know? What does that mean? I don't know. You tell me. I tried to jokingly explain this to my mom and my sister this weekend. They looked a little bit bewildered. Of course, I deserved it, according to them, because I was an antagonist. I deserved it because I was teasing. And I was a teaser, but I wasn't a violent. I didn't initiate violence. I teased my dad about the one time he spanked me. I never let it go, and it's fun because my dad's just he's not a violent guy. He's a child psychologist. He's a shrink, PhD. I tease him about that too, and he laughs because he's got a good sense of humor. But the one time he spanked me was, there was this girl. I'd go to visit him. My parents were divorced, so I'd go spend the weekends at his house with my first stepmom and her 4 kids, my brothers and sisters. And there's this girl that lived next door who yelled at me and called me a penis. How dare her? She called me a penis. What did I do? Well, I called her a vagina. And I yelled it across the street. Well, you're a vagina. I think my dad heard this, or somebody told him about it. And the sun went down, and my dad grabbed my hand, and he marched me over next door, knocked on their door. They opened it. The family was seated in the living room, and we stood by the door inside. And he said, "My son has something to say to you." And I said, "No, I don't." Oh, boy, plan's not working. And he said, "Apologize to them." I said, "I won't apologize to them. She called me a penis, and I called her a vagina. Fair is fair." So yeah, he didn't get the apology. Tense moment. Standing there. Boy, did he look like a fool, right? He thought he was his authority was undermined. He couldn't even control his own son. Anyway, he marched me back to his house and down into the office, office/family room where we watched Saturday morning cartoons. And he said, "This is it. You're getting a spanking." And he bent me over his knee, pulled down my little pants, and he whacked me. It didn't even hurt that much. I mean, but boy, with violence, I was thinking, this is not cool. This is injustice. This is not right. I was right, by the way. I was totally right for not apologizing. I still, to this day, I just think, no, she called me a penis and I called her vagina. Fair deal. Even Steven. But he spanked me. And I made him feel like shit for it. Still do. I mean, like I'm telling this tape. telling this story on tape. And he has a good attitude about it. He laughs about it. He lost his temper because I made him look like a fool. Not because I called the girl a vagina, but because I made him look like a fool in front of the neighbors. Fair enough. He lost his temper. But that's one time. Meanwhile, when I went home, I would get a spanking with a wooden spoon probably daily, for not going to bed on time, for giggling downstairs with my brother Mike or Erica or April. That wooden spoon drawer would open up and we'd all shut up. And again, it didn't hurt that much. In fact, sometimes we'd get a spanking because we'd laugh about the spanking. Mom would come downstairs with a wooden spoon. She'd whack our butts and we'd freak out and we'd do that little dance where you're trying to move your butt to avoid the spoon, And sometimes my mom would whack herself with the spoon and that would make her mad. So she'd whack us again. But then so many times she'd whack us with the spoon, we'd all cry. She'd go back upstairs with the spoon and then we'd start giggling because, it was funny. Oh, but then the spoon drawer would open up again because she'd hear us giggling about it. It was just... I've never been one for violence. I've never understood why words needed to turn into violence. Like, that's what my sister and my mom were telling me this weekend, that I deserved it. I deserved it. No apologies. No. To a lot of people in the world, words deserve to be met with violence. If you make them feel a certain way, they become violent. And that's the solution. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this. I was glad to be off the internet. Social media is terrible. We don't need to know about all these shootings. We don't need to know. But they're going to keep happening because if you keep pushing people into corners, they're going to be violent, especially if they didn't have dads. Especially if they were raised by violent women. I don't know. I'm not claiming to have all the answers here, but none of it's a surprise. I'm more surprised that there isn't more violence. It kind of blows my mind that it's so rare. Statistically speaking, it's so rare. Still, even though it seems, because the media is shoving it down our throats, and it's the only topic, it's still very rare. Anyway, thanks for listening.